Basically, I can tell you that most of the symptoms that people are experiencing are, the upper respiratory. For me, I have like an acute sensitivity to aspergillus specifically.
Mm,
So if I go to a hotel or something and there's aspergillus, it's like within about, I don't know, a minute of me entering the room, it almost feels like I immediately got a cold. Like it's the
whoa,
craziest thing.
that's wild.
And my nose starts running. I'm sneezing. Sometimes I get like itchy in
Hmm.
my, around my face. Sometimes
Yep.
my eyes are burning or like perpetually itchy. I literally, it feels very, very weird. What's even more interesting is about 5 minutes after I leave that environment, it's like it never happened.
That's
So
crazy.
it's very, and that's what I imagine that, certain people feel
Yeah.
um, when they're acutely sensitive.
Yep.
When you're chronically sensitive, it's a whole different ballgame. I mean, you can go into a moldy environment and like it might take you 3 days, 4 days, sometimes even a week to
Whoa.
really get out of that funk. And some of those symptoms can be like brain fog, chronic fatigue,
Yep.
definitely your upper respiratory symptoms. But then you have, mycotoxins, which I think are the biggest concern from a health perspective when it comes to, making sure that you have a really good environment. You want to make sure it's mycotoxin free. That's where it starts to get a little scary because a lot of research points to mycotoxins being carcinogenic, having a lot of, cancer related issues, deterioration of tissues, muscles, bones, etc. Those are where things get scary. Obviously, we don't know the thresholds. For a lot of those symptoms, it could be a very high amount of mycotoxins that's present inside the body. But the thing to be concerned about is if you're sensitive, the biggest issue you have is your body's not detoxifying these things from your body. And so if you are in a moldy environment that has mycotoxins and a ton of contamination present, then your body is not removing it and you're just basically, it just keeps compounding inside your body as you're constantly exposed. So it's just getting in faster than it's coming out. And I think that's where you start to see like things get really, really much worse.
Mm.
um, you know Mold is not going to be as scary for some people as it is for others. And I think that as a society, we have to be cognizant of that and be, kind of supportive of that it may totally impact one person drastically different than it does another.
Right.
So, if someone in your family starts complaining and, mold is what is thought to be the culprit,
Hmm.
I would definitely listen to them because I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's one of the biggest familial challenges that I always see on a daily basis is, because 1 out of 4 people are going to be sensitive, that means that when one person's not feeling well in your family and they think it's mold and the doctor thinks it's mold and the
Hmm.
hygienist thinks it's mold, but you're like, but I feel fine. You got to take that as an understanding of like, okay, I feel fine. I'm lucky
Right.
that, my immune system's really strong. I don't have these issues, that I'm able to detoxify this and, not rush to judgment that
Yep.
the other person is crazy or it's all in their head. Because,
Right.
for me, I've seen, you know, over 500 families go through this exact scenario.
Mm.
And then after remediation, they actually start to heal. And it's like, wow, so you weren't crazy after all,
Yeah.
and we could just skip a few steps, like just, do some research out there. You'll understand that this is a real thing and it impacts people vastly different
Sure.
every single time. It's a very individualized thing. So,
Definitely. How can people get healthy again after remediation? Is it something as simple as like once the process is done, it's just going to kind of naturally happen, or are there certain things people can do to get healthy quicker?
well, you know, it will naturally happen, obviously, because
Sure.
you're not constantly re-exposed. I think that's the biggest issue because there are things you can take. There's binders, there's antifungals, there's a lot of anti-inflammatory supplements, things that can really help heal the body. I know there's tons of doctors all over the country, so no matter where you are, if you type in, holistic doctor, functional medicine doctor, naturopathic doctor, you research who's in your area, you call them and ask them if they have success treating mold. I think that you'll definitely find someone that you can connect with. But the reality of it is, if you just do that part, and believe me, I've had clients that were like, I don't, fixing this house is far too expensive to confront right now. I'm just going to go to the doctor. You'll start to feel better on that side too, but then you hit a plateau. Like you can't get 100% until you really do both. Now, I recommend always seeing a doctor and getting on some sort of program. It's very similar to biohacking, right? You have imbalances going on. You have, poor detoxification going on. You need to kind of correct that. I think that if you do that, you're going to definitely start to heal faster than if you just were to let it, happen naturally.
Sure. Got it. That's good to know. Very cool. How about your book, Mold Medic? What else have we not discussed that you want to talk about? Some key takeaways from your book.
So, I mean, that book was written for people who really are sensitive, I think. Mm-hmm. And if you're sensitive and you're like, you know what, I know I have been impacted by mold. I really don't feel well. I don't necessarily know where it is, but I know it's here.
Sure.
And I've been through a few inspectors. Maybe you've even been through remediation before, and you're like, I just can't seem to get over mold. That book is going to help you for sure, because it really outlines like how to find a good mold inspector. What are the types of questions you need to ask? Same thing on remediation. I have a doctor that helped me write one of the chapters that actually talk about the body and how mold can impact the body and what to do if you have mold toxicity inside your body. And then it starts talking about like, well, how do I improve my home overall, from a construction standpoint, so that I don't have this reoccurring issue? What do I do with my HVAC system? What about all my stuff that could be potentially contaminated? I've been in places where it was so bad, there was mushrooms growing on the wall. I kid you not. And it was like, this person was like, well, what do I do with my stuff? And I'm like, man, please throw it all away. That's bad. And so you gotta really know like what's the best bang for the buck on how to deal with your stuff, depending on how bad the home really was. And all of that stuff is outlined on there because it's really just never been done before on how to really deal with something from a mold expert's point of view, is actually who physically does the remediation perspective. So I think that book would do wonders. Now, if you are not sensitive to mold and you read the book, I think it's going to give you some really good information on how mold remediation should be, so that, because look, we don't know the long-term effects mold exposure has on someone who's healthy. We don't know
right.
if it makes them sensitive over time, right? So I think if you're really healthy, you have mold and you're like, you know what, I want better air quality. That's my 2021, my change there, my resolution. So it'll really outline the steps of how to do it properly, because there's so many snake oil salesmen in this business that are like, we'll just fog it for $1,500, and
yep.
We'll wipe it down and call it a day. And obviously the problem with that is mold has roots that grow into building materials. So when you just wipe away what's on the surface, the roots are still there. It's kind of like just like removing a weed by cutting the stem.
Right.
It's just going to grow back, right?
Yep.
So, there's a lot of processes out there that seem financially, achievable and attractive. But remember, there's 3 pillars, right? It's remove the colonization, remove the source that created the colonization in the first place, and then clean up the contamination. So the fogging process will clean up the contamination, right?
Yeah.
But does it correct the water intrusion? I didn't hear anything about ripping anything out and fixing anything. And does it actually remove the colony if the roots are still there and they're going to grow back? No, it doesn't. So like that's what I'm saying. These are the things you have to worry about. I think
right.
If you own a home, buy the book, because 1 out of every 10 years is the statistic based upon the insurance industry. 1 out of every 10 years, we're going to have a water damage event. So it's a good book to equip you with the knowledge of, if I ever have mold, I want to make sure it's done right. I want to protect my family. I'm going to, have the knowledge now to make sure that when I need remediation, I'm well equipped.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to the education piece, and I really see it like there's different tiers of people and how mold affects us. There's obviously people that are hypersensitive to mold. But then there's people like myself where like I feel very healthy and strong immune system, and from my knowledge, I don't have high sensitivity to mold. but
Sure.
it's still something that can affect my life and something that I want to learn more about and learn how I can prevent it. And if I do have a home one day that I end up getting mold, I want to know the right steps to take.
Yeah, definitely.
So kudos to you, man. I think you're doing really good work here.